This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This. And today we're going to talk about the end of The Boys. I had intended to do this a couple weeks ago, right after the finale, and then we had Sean's graduation a couple weeks ago, and last week I had Katie all week, and we went to Louisville to visit family. And I do think there is a certain extent to which, knowing that this is coming to an end, I'm not real hard pressed to do it and get it done, because it will be the end. But during that couple weeks, I actually found some other content stuff that I want to talk about in one of the other winding down episodes. So I've got this one today. I've got another one that I have content for next week, and then I've got another one that I found something for while I was taking my little break for the last couple weeks. So kind of rounding out what I want to talk about as we wind this down. And then the final show will be Justin and Jim's final dumb gay shit show. We had a Justin and Jim's dumb gay shit show a couple years ago, and it was just me and Magoo and a bunch of other people talking about random dumb shit. And then so we did Justin and Jim's dumb gay shit show part 2, which was a year or so ago, where we did much of the same. And that will be episode 400, and that will close it out. We will do Justin and Jim's final dumb gay shit show. Speaking of final and dumb and gay and an absolute shit show, The Boys has ended, and the series finale, I don't think anybody, even the most rabid TDS suffering leftist, would have watched that final season and thought that it was any good. And I don't think anybody could have watched that final episode and thought, oh yeah, this is like TV masterpiece. I mean, that finale made the Game of Thrones finale look spectacular. It was anticlimactic at best. Most of it, I was watching it, and as the episode wrapped up and they got to like the fight, and I was like, that's it? Like, for half of this episode, nothing has happened. They've done nothing. And then the way it ends, the final fight is just stupid. Everything about it is stupid. See, going back to Game of Thrones, and also this ties into other things that I've talked about before. So, like, The Boys is based off of a comic book series, and it is brutal and horrible, and I don't recommend that anybody actually read it. It's actually way worse than the show. And I haven't actually finished all of it, because I've read bits and pieces here and there just to kind of see what sort of differences there were between show and comic. And the comic is gruesome and like man. But the show doesn't follow the comic really at all. It gives you the general premise of the characters and somewhat of the story, at least at the beginning, more so. It starts out with the premise, the basic premise of the comics, but then it kind of does its own thing. And I think, like with Game of Thrones, like when Game of Thrones ran out of source material to work off of, because obviously George R.R. Martin is not interested in actually finishing that series. He wants to write all of his other basically extension of fan fiction prequels and stuff, and not finish the Game of Thrones books. When the show ran out of source material and the writers started to inject their own views into it, you could tell, like, there was a definitive shift, and it got way worse. And then as it progressed to the end, it just continued to get worse. What you saw with The Boys, if you have watched, is like the first season was like a cultural phenomenon. It was, what if superheroes weren't actually good guys? They did it as a job, and they were actually just a bunch of power-hungry psychopaths that being popular and being viewed as a hero kept them in line, because that was how they were powerful. And then kind of what happens if that stops being the case. And so the first two seasons were very good. They kind of progressively ramped up the how far can we push stuff to make you throw up or make you quit watching the show, in terms of just being, grotesque. But the overall concept and the idea was well developed and well executed. And then they started to get they started in with some of the like Nazi stuff, and there were some people who got mad about that, but they did it well. Like, they didn't overplay their hand with it, and it made sense for why the superheroes were created, and like the guy who did it was a Nazi scientist, and they didn't overplay their hand on the Nazi stuff. But then when you get further into it, like especially season 4, you really start to see that they are trying to turn this into a political commentary on the modern, United States. And I think the mistake they made in season 4 was they way overplayed their hand on trying to paint the Starlighters, or the like woke progressive side of it, as the good guys. And instead what they ended up doing was just highlighting how insane most of like woke progressive ideology is. I didn't think, watching season 4, that like Homelander and the Vault, like superheroes, were good guys. But I also looked at, or you also see the insanity that is progressive ideology from the Starlighter side of it. And it's like, oh, they're not really good guys either. They might actually in some ways be worse. And so I think that played into why season 5 went just so over the top, heavy-handed on trying to play up like internment camps and Homelander as Trump, as Jesus, as like all of this insanity. Like they completely jumped the shark and then kept going. And it was just bad. Like they stopped trying to create a good story. They stopped trying to tell this story of superheroes gone bad and, the corruption of the influence of power and stuff like that. And it just became a political commentary. And the problem is we get enough of that. Like, people are turning off this type of stuff that just becomes another sounding board for all of the woke ideology. You're inundated with it on social media, day in and day out. We don't want it in our television. We don't want it in our sports. We want to have something that we can escape from all of that bullshit. And so when something like this happens where, and there was I'm going to pull it up because it was, and I thought it was an interesting take on it. And I thought also a correct take. This is from Thomas Chatowski. I always like to give credit. I think a lot of people need to come to terms with the reality that this show was deliberately driven into the ground because it became too popular with the wrong types of people in the eyes of the showrunner. Be it The Man in the High Castle. I enjoyed the first couple seasons of Man in the High Castle. I never did finish it. I guess I'm glad that I didn't, if it seems like it did the same thing. Be it Joker. If you aren't familiar with the first Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, really, really good. Second movie, horrendous dog shit. Holy fucking shit. I'm typically pro-life, but that movie should have been aborted early on. Be it Civil War. Mark and Jim and I actually talked about the Civil War movie. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And some of the way I really like Alex Garland, the director who did that movie, some of the way he tried to go out of his way to not pick a side really highlighted the insanity of not picking a side. And it was unfulfilling, put it that way. Or be it The Boys. Any show or movie that has the interest of young right-wing men will inevitably be driven into the ground due to hatred from its own creator over the audience enjoying it. And this is another thing that we've talked about with other stuff, Dune, and how Herbert was trying to like use Paul as a warning against these strong unilateral almost messianic leadership figures, and instead he created one that fans really latched onto and were like, yeah, like he didn't want people to, he wanted Paul to be a cautionary tale against a strong leader like that. And instead what people saw was the Galactic Empire is fucked, and Paul actually is able to do something about it, and not only is able to, but rises up and does something about it. It's like, yeah, that's what we want. We want somebody that's going to fix it. And so like Herbert came to hate his own creation because of the reception they got. And which also goes into the new Dune movies that are being made. The director has changed things and is kind of altering things with the story because he's trying to pay homage to what Herbert wanted Paul to be, as opposed to what Paul became for the fan base. And I wouldn't say that the movies are going poorly, but there are some things that stand out as, and even for people who are not fans of the books, things that stand out as not aligning, as not making sense, because they're trying to change it. And that's what you got with The Boys. Like, it started out good, strong story about, like, what if the superheroes aren't actually good, and then you get the side quest of, like, we're going to kill them all. We're going to kill Homelander, and all of the build up with that, and then policing the superheroes to try to make them behave themselves, and the different storylines that go forward. Heroes in the military, like creating supervillains, all, like, a lot of depth and a lot to work with. And then it just turned into political gobbledygook nonsense. Progressivism versus fascism. It got boring and stupid. And like the Thomas Chudowski on the Twitter post said, like, there's no way to look at it other than this was a deliberate sabotage of a really good product. Like, they decided that it needed to take on all of this overt political messaging. And then it just got bad. And then it just got worse. I don't understand how marketing this stuff has become so impossible for people. Like, we don't need to be preached at. We don't need to learn a lesson. We don't need to have some message in everything. We just need good, raw entertainment. And as pop culture continues to think that it needs to push more and more message into everything, the more we're going to push back. There's a lot of stuff, I talked about Pragmata, the video game, a few weeks ago. There's a lot of stuff that, if it just steers clear of preaching bullshit, it will do well. Whereas there's also a lot of stuff that the instant it starts to preach bullshit, it gets turned off and then it'll die. The people who consume this stuff, the actual target audience, the ones who pay for and invest into these types of things, are fed up of being preached at. We want to be entertained. We don't want to have political, social justice, woke bullshit, nonsense stuff down our throats every second of the day. Most people get enough of it in their day-to-day life at work, in all of their interactions on social media, even the ones that they are not trying to be political in, a lot of times end up getting politicized. And we just don't want to have to deal with that bullshit. So Bud Light is the perfect example. Bud Light took on a more progressive messaging. And it wasn't overnight. It was a slow roll. And then it came to a head. It reached its culmination. And the easiest base to sell a product to said, fuck you, we're done. And Bud Light fell off a cliff. Anheuser-Busch took it on the chin hard. And now look at the new Bud Light commercials that are coming out with Shane Gillis and Post Malone and the Manning brothers. Like, they're fun and they're funny and they're entertaining. And they have no message or anything. It is just, we're drinking Bud Light and doing dumb shit. And it's funny and it's great. Easy. It's easy to sell something to the demographic that wants to buy stuff. The ones that have the money and actually give a shit. And all they have to do is not keep injecting woke bullshit messaging into it. But instead, as soon as they realize that right-wing male audiences are interested in a product, they decide this is the time that we need to teach them a lesson. And we're done learning lessons. Sorry. Fuck that shit. We're too old for it. We don't care. If you want to teach us a lesson, we'll teach you one back. And the lesson is, give us what we want or you don't get our money. Thank you. Fuck off. And I think that is becoming more and more apparent in backlash to stuff like the final season of The Boys. And like I talked about with the race and gender swapping stuff in Invincible. Like, even though that stuff is well done, it feels like in the modern era that it is preaching at your target audience for no reason. And people are getting pissed off and starting to say, no, we don't want this anymore. So now that means, the question going forward is, does the entertainment industry learn from that lesson like Bud Light did? Or do they continue to double down and put out garbage bullshit that nobody wants? And when I say nobody wants, I mean not even the progressive, like, woke psychopaths. They don't watch that stuff. They don't buy those products. They don't care. The extent of their concern is that the message is there. But they're not going to invest in the message. They're not going to buy the product. They don't want to watch it. They don't want to play it. They don't want anything to do with it. They just want the people who it's intended for to get the message, to know that they're the bad guys and they need to change their ways. And we ain't changing shit. So get used to it. Give us what we want or you don't get our money anymore. And that's it. Simple as. That'll do it for today. Next week, I will follow up on Lord of the Rings. An article from Salon from a couple years ago. I love Salon. Salon's always just off the fucking rocker. So we'll do Salon's article about the far right's obsession with Lord of the Rings next week. And then a couple weeks from now, I've got one. It's about Legos and female behavior patterns. I think that stuff is fascinating. I never understand. I would like to understand the female brain, and maybe some of you who listen can help me with that. I would love to understand the female brain, but it is completely alien to most men. And so there's a little short thing about Legos and the female brain. And I thought it was interesting. It also ties into another article that I'd bookmarked from a couple months ago and wasn't really sure when or how to get around to it. So I think I'll tie those two together. So that'll be, if all goes well, 2 weeks from now. We'll talk about Legos and the female brain and see what kind of crazy shit we can build with those Legos. All right, that'll do it. Have a good rest of your week. I'll catch you next week.